Is Cthulhu Wars Duel Extinction worth your hard-earned gaming dollars? We'll come on back after the break for a full review of this two-player, asymmetric, very competitive game of world domination in the Cthulhu mythos. Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at the game of Cthulhu Wars Duel. Now in this video, I'm going to give you my full overview of the game. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will do my best to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me off the show, Board Game Reviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. If you enjoy the content and you enjoy the videos I put out there, think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. Patreon.com/otsbgr. Just $1 in the tip jar can help me cover my costs and help keep the channel growing strong. No gimmicks, no games. This channel is 100% sponsor free. Just a great way to say thanks for the content I put out there. If you enjoy this video series, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and this video is all going to be about the game itself. Now, Cthulhu Wars Duel is a two-player, very asymmetric game in the Cthulhu Mythos game. Basically, what the Cthulhu Wars Duel's game, there are multiple box sets. This is actually the second one in the series. The first one had the factions for Cthulhu himself and also for the Black Goat. Now what this expansion, standalone expansion, I should clarify, does is it brings in two new factions into the game. Factions we've seen in the Granddaddy basic Cthulhu Wars game, but these are factions that are new to Cthulhu Wars Duel themselves. Now these two factions are the faction of the Windwalker, which is an aggressive style faction similar to Cthulhu himself, but not quite the same. It's an aggressive faction that has a little bit of a different way it plays. It also has the ability to have a control of the tempo of the game. If you want to know what I'm talking about here, check out my full playthrough video where I play a full game between these two factions. The second faction in this box is going to be the Sleeper faction. Now, the Sleeper faction is very much a controlling kind of faction, where they control the pace of the game, whether it's from their personal powers of lethargy or just the ability of how they control the status of the way the game is evolving. The Sleeper faction is not very much a go out there and stomp everything kind of faction. They're kind of a faction that kind of watches what the other player does and they react proactively to what the other player is doing. So you have two factions in the space box that play quite differently. Now on top of that, what this box set does, it also adds in a new map. Now this is probably, I'd like to say this is going to be the shining star of this box set because we've seen the factions before. These are the factions that have been out in Cthulhu Wars for years and years and years. Cthulhu Wars is a game that's I think is almost 8 years now. And what this game has done is taken these factions and balanced them to make it a true two-player game, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong here. That is a wonderful accomplishment. But the true star of the show here, and the main attraction I think for a lot of players, is going to be the new map here. Now I say the map is going to be the big star of the show here because this map is what changes a lot of things, and this brings in the new gameplay of things that we haven't seen before. And what this map includes in the game is the ability of these dark towers. Now these dark towers, what they do is they create a more of a much different board state, because basically what's going to happen is at the end of every turn during the Doom phase, these dark towers are going to be added onto the board. Basically, two are going to come out every single round. At the very first round, basically the starting locations are each going to get one of these dark towers. After that, it's going to be controlled by whoever is the first player. What's the big deal with these dark towers? Well, these dark towers take over any gate that happens to be in the location they're in. Well, what does that mean? That means that you no longer control that gate. And this creates a extremely different gameplay. And it changes up the gameplay quite a bit because now we have a board that creates lots of abandoned gates on it. And that means that players are going to be sharing power. Instead of one player getting 2 power for controlling a gate, both sides are going to get 1 power for the uncontrolled gate. And now here's the extra clincher on this map that you'll notice. Look at all these dark towers on this board. That means that as you continue to add gates onto the map, you're also going to be continuing to add these dark towers on the map, which means that these towers will slowly gain control of these towers. I'm sorry, these specific gates, meaning that this is going to be a very high powered board for all the players. They're going to stay pretty even. And the interesting thing is, of course, I know I should mention this. I know you can also check out my other Cthulhu Wars Duel video for the basic very first box set. But the thing that you need to understand here is all these factions can be used on any map. So I could take this map right now and I can go play this with a base box. I can throw Cthulhu and Black Goat on this. I can do Sleeper versus Black Goat. I can use Windwalker versus Cthulhu. Plus, we already know there's more factions coming out, but I'll talk about all that in just a minute here. What this does is this creates a very dynamic gameplay, because you can notice that there's 9 of these towers on this map. There are only a couple more locations on this map that don't have towers, so you have a game that plays differently because you have locations that are going to be very hotly contested in a very different way, because one of the strong things you need to understand about the rules of Cthulhu Wars Duel, or even the basic game, is you can't summon new units at a gate unless it's a gate you control. So while you may control a gate, you can still summon units, but these gates out here that are going to be taken over by these dark towers, these are taking away locations where you can summon units. Now we have this game that's evolving and changing and playing very much a new dynamic and brings a different gameplay to the game. Because you have this game that it kind of reminds me of the Primeval map from the original Cthulhu Wars, where the board is shrinking down. Well, this kind of shrinks down in a little bit of a way because you're starting to limit the places that you can do the summoning, and summoning is so darn important, because if you don't control a gate, you can't bring out any more of your units. So this changes the mindset and changes the chess style game of the gameplay, because you know there's basically only 5 areas on the entire map that you can control, and that when you control these locations, you can bring out units of those locations. So you have to play smart. So these 5 areas are going to be highly contested. They're going to be very fought over by the different units, and the different players are going to play differently. And that's why I say this map is really going to be the start of the show here. So Cthulhu Wars Duel, I've done a review of it before. I could just go back and re-harp on the things I said before, and you can check out the other video, but I'll just cover it really quickly. I'll tell you, this is a fantastic way to play Cthulhu Wars. If you want a 2-player way to play Cthulhu Wars, this is the best way to do it. They rebalance the factions, they rebalance the spell books, they rebalance all the requirements. They made the game so it plays fantastically as a 2-player game now. They've done a beyond awesome job doing this. It's just awesome how well this has been done. You have Cthulhu Wars, which was a great game that played 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to, well, I think we can play up to 10 players with that game now. But it never played great at the 2-player count. There were rules for doing it, but the game was never that great at the 2 players. Now Cthulhu Wars is a 2-player game. That is so awesome. But these maps are what's going to continue to start adding the play, the variety, and the interesting intricacies of the game, and improving that so much. Because you just look at the basic map from the very first Cthulhu Wars Duel that came with the very base box. No special rules. You basically go out there and you're playing Cthulhu Wars just the way you would with any standard map. You throw this map in the mix now, though. Now you have the gameplay that changes. Different factions are going to interact with this map differently. Your more factions, such as your Sleeper, which can stay back and kind of control the tempo of the game, they can find a nice little spot to sit there and kind of watch the other player. But if the other player is very aggressive and starts taking away all these very precious locations where you can summon, that kind of forces a Sleeper to come out of their corner, because if they sit in their corner too long, they're going to lose the game. So now you've created this extra tempo of this game. You create this different style, this different mechanic, and the game is going to evolve totally differently. And that's just so darn cool. I really appreciate how this is done here, and I also appreciate that they're starting to throw out more factions for the game. Now, the rulebook has hinted about the fact that there are even more factions coming out for this. I don't know what the next 2 factions are, but you can guarantee that there's going to be coming out probably within the next couple months. If we probably don't have them on a shipping barge right now, I would not be surprised if that was the case, because this is a phenomenal deal. You have the granddaddy Cthulhu Wars game, which is basically a $150 game. I know you can get it for a little bit more if you look at the retail. You can probably get it for a little bit less if you get lucky at one of the online shops or something like that. But the game is $150 on average for 4 factions, and it's a great 4-player game. It's not a good 2-player game. It's just not a good 2-player game with that box set. What Cthulhu Wars Duel does is makes it a great 2-player game at a dynamic price point. We're not dealing with these gigantic miniatures, which makes the game cost so much money anymore. We're now dealing with cardboard cutouts, and these cardboard cutouts have great artwork on them. They are heavy duty. I mean, that shows you how, hey, it actually fell that time. But I mean, these are really weighted very, very well. Oh, now it's going to prove me wrong. Trust me. These are weighted very, very well, and they will sit there and they will stand up. You don't have to worry about a stiff breeze blowing these things over, because they're very heavy duty quality. Nice thick plastic stands hold them there, and they fit in the box very, very nicely. So you have this wonderful artwork. You have this very dynamic game board. You have 2 new factions that are brought to the game, and the game plays as a fantastic 2-player chess style game. They've done a fantastic job of doing that. I'm impressed by how well they managed to get a game that was never great for 2 players and made it into a great 2-player game now. And plus, they did it at a great price point. At this point, for $80, you could have 4 factions, 2 maps, and a 2-player game that plays fantastically. Or for $80, if you can track down one of the extra copies of the basic map, you now have a 4-player game of Cthulhu Wars for $80. If you're okay with these cardboard cutouts, and why wouldn't you be? These cardboard cutouts are absolutely fantastic. So I want to give Peterson Games a whole bunch of kudos for doing a great job of taking a great multiplayer game, taking the tension, the knife fight, the great dynamics of that higher player 3, 4, 5, 6-player game, and managed to bring it down into a 2-player game with a lot of variety, a lot of tweaks, and changes while keeping the core game of Cthulhu Wars and making it a great 2-player game. Now, before we go any further, I do need to say that there's still a couple little negatives about Cthulhu Wars Duel, but it's getting better now. The negatives I have are getting a heck of a lot better, and you're going to see why I'm saying this right here, right now. The original base box for Cthulhu Wars Duel was Cthulhu versus Black Goat. You had a bruiser faction versus a faction that you had to know how to play the game very, very well. If you did not know how to play the game very well, you could get stomped as a Black Goat very, very easily. If you're a really good Black Goat player, though, you can pretty much give Cthulhu a run for his money probably about 60 or 70% of the time. I personally play Black Goat all the time. That's the faction I enjoy the most, and I can stomp Cthulhu in the first duel box. At least, I'd say at least 60 or 70% of the time, but that's because I understand the faction really well. But players who don't understand that faction very well can get stomped extremely easy by Cthulhu. Now we have a second box set which kind of has a little bit of that feeling to it, because you have Sleeper, which is a faction that needs to control the tempo of the game very strongly and also needs to dance on a razor's edge here, because if you stall too long, you're going to lose. If you react too quickly, you're going to put your neck out on the chopping block, and Windwalker is going to be happy to chop off that head of you very, very quickly. So now we have a little bit of the same issue we had with the original base box, but it's not quite as prevalent here, which is something I really do appreciate. You now have 2 factions that are not easier to play than the base factions from the original Cthulhu Wars Duel, but they're easier to play versus each other, and that's kind of a really cool thing I want to include here. But we now have the same problem if you only buy this base set that we have with the original box. There's only 2 factions in the game, and after a while, you're going to get a couple plays out of this. You'll probably get about 5, 6, maybe 7 plays out of this base box for $40. And during those times, you're going to probably pick your faction. You'll probably play Sleeper a couple of times. Then you'll turn the tables. You'll try the Windwalker a couple of times. But after about 5 or 6 times, you're going to be like, yeah, I want more. So now it's good to say that we actually have a fix for this problem, because when we had the original Cthulhu Wars Duel, there's no more. When we originally had the first box set, you basically had Cthulhu and Red Goat, and when you wanted more, it wasn't available. Now it's available. So one of the negatives I had from the original box set when I did my prior review is kind of being corrected at this point. That's the point I wanted to make. Now we have 4 factions available to us, plus we have 2 maps. We've doubled the amount of maps, we've doubled the amount of factions, but since it's a 2-player game, we've effectively more than doubled the amount of factions that can work against us. You can play Cthulhu versus Windwalker, or versus Sleeper, or versus Red Goat. You can play Windwalker versus the other 3 factions. So you have a lot more variety and a lot more play potential that is just in the box set now. But what I'm trying to say here is, just like the original box set concern I had with the other one, I'm going to bring out the same concern again. You will want to buy both box sets. And I know it's only $80. And considering what you're getting for the $80, that's a steal. I mean, the way board game prices are going up, the way manufacturing costs are going up, the way shipping costs are going up, that is an absolute steal to get as much variety as you can get by getting both these boxes. But I have to impress upon you, you want to get both of the dual boxes. There's also another little add-on that adds 4 little mini-boss kind of neutral grade old ones that's available. I have not played it. I don't have any information on it. I just know it adds 4 neutral grade old ones that you add to the box set. But if you're looking at Cthulhu Wars Duel, buy both the box sets. It's $80, yes, I know, so that initial investment seems a little bit on the higher side, but when you compare it to the way the market is looking these days, for $80, you're getting a bang-up, awesome amount of replay variety. You're getting 4 factions that play great against each other, you're getting 2 maps that have a heck of a lot of variety, and you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of those 2 games. Just buy both the box sets. Again, I want to impress upon you, just owning one of these, you only have about 5 or 6 plays out before you be going, I really want something more. And that's what the other box set's going to get. that extra more that you want. The bottom line here though is Cthulhu Wars Duel is a fantastic game system that is now better thanks to the Extinction box. You have great components. This is all thick cardboard for all these components. These standees for all of your monsters and your great old ones and your units look absolutely fantastic. I know some people may not like the little circular discs that are for the acolytes here that come on the board, but trust me, you are going to appreciate them, especially when you see how crowded this board can get. I'm actually thankful the little acolytes are actually these little small little discs. It works a heck of a lot better because they actually fit on the board and you can actually see them a heck of a lot better. You have two factions that look great. The artwork is absolutely fantastic. You have a wonderfully designed map. Everything here is an absolute wonderful, great evolution of the Cthulhu Wars Duel system. I'm looking forward to more things coming out for it. I'm still absolutely happy that the gameplay is so nice and easy to explain how to play the game, but there's a lot to master the game. There is now a great, I don't want to say great because there was a sample gameplay overview on the other rulebook, but they cleaned it up a little bit. The rulebook has also been cleaned up a lot better on the inside. They've gone to much more details. They've given a little bit more text and also hinted at some of the other factions that are coming out. I would not be surprised about the next two factions coming out. I have a rough idea and a good guess on what they're going to be, but I do appreciate the fact that they took the time to go ahead and clean some things up and make the rulebook a little bit better, making this a really good rulebook. And it basically does justice to the game. I appreciate the fact that we have that nice turn overview on the back. And the nice thing about Cthulhu Wars is this is one of those games that once you know how to play it, you're always going to know how to play it because the game has a nice clean feel to it. And there are nice reminders on the back, such as the fact that you gain doom for killing things, and a nice reminder that you don't gain doom for a controlled gauge for people who are used to the standard rules. I like the fact that they add that, and this turn overview does a great job. I can basically tell you how to play this game, hand this over to you across from the table, and you're going to have an easy time playing the game.
There's still no minimum power rule, but I guess we just can't have everything. Well, like to, but we can't.
They did a fantastic job on this. I am so happy with this. I am really jonesing for the next box set to go ahead and add to the Cthulhu Wars Duel collection. That would bring us a total of 6 factions and 3 maps. And I know what map I'm hoping for. I have no way of knowing what's coming out next, but I know what map I would really love a style similar to, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to the next Cthulhu Wars Duel faction box coming for the game. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will get to them as quickly as I can. Also, feel free to email me at authorshowboardgamereviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. I'll do my best to answer emails as quickly as I can. If you enjoyed this video and you enjoy the content I put out there, think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar can help me cover my costs. No gimmicks, no games. This channel is 100% sponsor free, so you tossing $1 in tip jar is a great way to say thanks and tell me you appreciate all the hard work I put out there. Hope you enjoyed this video and this video series, and as always, thanks for watching.